evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our fifth Women's Cricket Network webinar. We are starting to fly into the summer, and it certainly feels like it now. The weather has turned up, and certainly my hay fever as well, so it must be summer. It continues to be a busy season for Durham on the pitch. We've had the Metro Bank one-day competition, the start of the T20 Blast, Men's International, and our upcoming Women's ODI. So I really do hope everyone is enjoying this non-stop cricket. And for those of you on the call going through the dreaded exams, I really do hope your cricket is proving a source of relief from revision. Before we dive into tonight's session, a quick introduction for those who are new to the forum. The Women's Cricket Network is all about connection, support, and of course, inspiration, a space where we can all share our experiences, learn from each other, and grow the game together at Durham, on and off the field. So tonight's theme, women's and girls cricket, and expert insight from our coaches. And as usual, we are thrilled to be joined by three awesome guests who are going to be sharing all about their route into coaching and specifically their work in the women's and girls game, their experiences, their advice and tips for all of current and future coaches of women and girls cricket. And also, hopefully, you'll be getting some advice for players on how to get the best from your own coaches out there. So please don't forget, this is your network. Feel free to drop any questions into the Zoom chat on my trusty mobile phone next to me. I'll be getting those through, and I'll do my best to get through them and share them with our guests. So let's get started with tonight's chat and introductions to my guests this evening. I'm delighted to welcome three of the club's coaching team who are going to be sharing their insights with us tonight. So firstly, Laura Trotter, who works in the Cricket Foundation as a development coach, balancing both a playing role alongside her coaching. Laura's been part of the Durham Pathways since under 13 level, and is now part of the Women's Academy side, having travelled to Zimbabwe with the team pre-season. We also have Nathan Rimington with us, a former Durham seamer. Nathan enjoyed 4 years as a professional here in the Northeast, and he returned to the club as an assistant academy and pathway coach in 2021. Promoted, I'm pleased to say, last year. Nathan's now the women's lead bowling coach, working with the professional team and our academy programme. And finally, welcome to Will Gibman. Having retired from his playing career in 2018, Will has been with the club since 2019, working with the boys and the pathway teams, now working as the men's first team batting coach. He's also worked as an assistant role with the England women's team. And for me, he gave one of the most inspiring speeches on the morning of the first ever professional Durham women's match. For those of you that haven't seen it, it really is worth digging out to get some inspirational coaching tips for that pre-match moment. So welcome to all of our coaching professionals. Thank you so much for your time tonight. We have got 25 minutes ahead of us, 30 minutes to fly through tons of questions that I have prepared, but also I'm sure we're going to get some from the webinar as well. So let's start with a blanket question for all three of you, if that's all right. Obviously one of the panel is still playing, but two are former professionals. How did you all get into coaching, and in particular women's and girls coaching? I guess I'll start with you, Laura. You're still juggling that role of both. So what was it with you? I presume it was playing first and foremost.
Yeah, so as you said before, I started at under 13s level in county. So I was 9 at the time. So there was no under 11s pathway at that point. So I was 9 playing in the under 13s. I just built my way up through that. And then I got to sort of college, end of year 11 college. And Rachel Hopkins was my coach at the time. Well, at the time still is. And there was some spaces for casual coaching is an option as part of the foundation, going in and just helping with the girls, coaching on the nights. And I just loved it. It was just great, putting back in what I got for the many years. So then built my way up, went through college, got my level 1 coaching badge. Then after college, Graham Weeks offered me a job coaching at the foundation full time. So I kind of done that instead of the typical going off to uni and stuff like that. And I got my level 2 coaching badge and then on from there.
And I guess, a lot of a lot of people will look to the elite level of coaching, but I think you've probably got one of the best jobs. You know, you're going out to schools, you're attracting women and girls into our amazing sport. Do you kind of pinch yourself every day to know that that's actually your job?
Yeah, it's literally, sometimes it's just like, I can't believe it actually is my job. Like, I'm on the school playground thinking this was me a few years ago. Now I'm being the one coming in to coach. It's just surreal sometimes.
And do you see that kind of, obviously you're really enjoying your coaching, you've got your level 1, as you mentioned, but you are still playing. Are you able to kind of get that juggle, that sort of dichotomy right in your life?
Yeah, it is hard work and a lot of long weeks and days, but it is like the pros from it is like unbelievable. Like, I love being busy, and it keeps you active and keeps you going. So it's class, really.
Well, and Nathan, what about you? Obviously, is it a case of professional? You're playing your professional, or you're in your professional career, and coaching's like the obvious next step when you retire, or was it something?
I'd say I was sort of went in a bit of a full circle. I think early on, similar to Trots, I just knew I wanted to be involved in sport, and straight out of school, I did a diploma of sports coaching while I was trying to become a professional. And then I think, you know, as my cricketing career went on, I tried some other study. I did a bit of nutrition and a few other things, but towards the back end of my career, it was clear that, you know, coaching was the option and the route I was going to take. So, yeah, lucky enough to find myself into the women's game now. I think directly out of playing, I ran my own business for a bit. So I've done some grassroots stuff as well. And then, yeah, like you said, back to the pathways and found myself in the fortunate position to work with the first ever Durham Pro Women's team. So, yeah, really exciting.
So is the Durham women's team the first women's team that you've worked with?
Yeah, I think when I did my own business, I did some girls-only clinics. I've got 2 daughters, and I saw how important it was to sort of have some girls-only clinics in that space. So, yeah, I did that. My sister was also a professional cricketer, so I sort of followed her career closely and did some coaching with the teams she played in. But, yeah, I think first, you know, full-time role in the women's game has been this one this year.
Yeah, and Will, is your kind of your story pretty much the same as Nathan's?
Pretty much, although I don't think I realised I wanted to get into coaching until a lot later. That's the only difference in my kind of story. Halfway through my playing career, I think I felt like I wanted to do something away from cricket and explore, you know, different avenues. But I had some experiences at the back end of my career, my playing career, where I kind of got I developed a passion for it based on working with some coaches where I felt didn't perhaps do it so well, and then I kind of, as I said, developed this passion. I wanted to make sure I kind of wanted to right some wrongs, I guess, and try. And I developed this real excitement for wanting to do it and do it well and do it properly. So I was dead lucky, really lucky. You know, as you said, I retired then in 2018 and got really lucky in my transition from playing to coaching, which not everybody has. I got a nice role with Kent, who was the club that I ended up playing for, my last club. And then from there, I got the phone call that kind of launched my coaching career, really, from Mark Robinson with England Women. And I managed to get a really nice role with them. And that's kind of how I found my way into the women's game, really.
And that, I mean, you know, I use my sport, and I have done it on previous webinars as a kind of a comparison. But I've come from you know, athletics, which is male, female, very equal. Coaching squads are often mixed genders. Coaches predominantly male, but more and more females in the game now, or kind of in the sport. Are you kind of, you know, and I know that certainly in our sport, you know, a lot of, I always felt that as a good athlete, I was very selfish, and I always think that's the worst trait for a coach. But at the same time, you said you wanted to right wrongs. You saw things in your professional playing career that you wanted to bring into coaching. So is it a kind of a balance of both? It doesn't mean you're a professional cricketer, you will make a great coach, because obviously there are attributes that are very different.
100%. You have it's a very selfless role, I think, being a coach. It's all about the player or players, and you have to make your peace with that straight away. It's not. Of course, you have your ambitions personally about what you want to achieve, and as a coach in the game. But the first rule, I think, of coaching is it's not about you; it's about the player, and helping them achieve their goals. And I think from that point on, you become a good coach straight away, because it's, as you say, you become selfless, you become hardworking, because you want to do everything you can for the player. So that, I think that recognition, that understanding immediately makes you a better coach.
And probably, I mean, again, I'd like to use this question across all three of you if I could, but I'll start with Laura, because I think you're in a perfect position, being a female player right now. What do you see are the key differences, if any, between coaching a men's and women's team?
Well, mainly coached women. I haven't coached that many men before, but like, the emotions do, I think, run a bit higher in the women's side of things. Like,
in the nicest possible way.
The emotions do run a bit higher. And I think it's like, physically, yes, it's different, but tactically it's the exact same. Like, the same motions, everything the same tactically and mentally. Like, you got to do the same sort of things as the men. So I think there's like a lot of similarities that differ in different strands of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like, Nathan, are there like common misconceptions that we can kind of set straight tonight? Like, I mean, do you see any key differences, or do you kind of just try and push them aside?
Yeah, no, I think there's some slight differences. So I'll put my bowling coach's hat on for a second, and I think the one rule difference in the women's game is you're only allowed 4 outside the circle, and I think that actually makes the game incredibly tactical. There's always sort of a part of the ground that's always open, which makes it incredibly difficult for a bowler. So, more sort of cat and mouse games that sort of go on. And I think, there might be a misconception out there that the game isn't tactical, but I think it is very tactical, yeah.
And Will, are you seeing, like, is there, certainly when you went in to start working with the England women's team, did you have to sort of change your train of thought, or did to you it was just a bunch of cricketers that you were coaching?
I think I come back to Trots's point about the emotional side of it. The way I would word it, I'm not sure there's more emotion in the women's game. I just think it's different. I think it's a different type of emotion. Guys are emotional, very emotional, but they just show it in a different way. And I think as a male coaching in the women's game, when opportunity allows, obviously I'm with the men day to day, but obviously with the 100 and helping out with Rimo and the girls as often as I can at Durham. I think that it's just understanding that women in the women's game, they show their emotions slightly differently. And as a guy, you've just got to understand what that looks like, and then how to adjust maybe the way you talk, or where you have those tough conversations, because it's just small things like that, I think. But I think that's the one misconception that I would perhaps talk about tonight is, I don't necessarily think it's more emotion. I just think it's different, and you've just got to understand what those differences are, and how to adjust your coaching style to adapt.
Yeah, I mean, when you said, I mean, you've first experience was working with the England women's team, which obviously is a fantastic first job to get. But like, this is what I find interesting with international teams, because much like football or rugby, whatever, they're playing club and then they're pulled together. I know cricket's slightly different because you go and you're based with the international team for a long period of time. But as a coach, these are a group of players that you've not worked with necessarily. You might have connections with a club and have worked with a couple of. How quickly are you able to impart? Because they obviously have their own coaches or their own setup that they've had at their club, and then you're pulling a group of players together to try and work as one for obviously for international purposes. How different and difficult is that?
Yeah, I think at that time of the international women's game, the scheduling that Mark Robinson better. The girls spent a lot of time together at Loughborough. It's a little bit different now, but we would be together a lot of the time, and it was actually very similar to a county setup in regard that you still spent a lot of time with these girls, and that gave you the time as a coach to build up those relationships and build that trust, which is a word I think I'll probably use quite a lot tonight. Because if you want to get your messaging right, if you want to build those relationships, those one-to-one relationships, you have to build that trust, but that player-coach relationship. So I think I was quite lucky joining England Women at that time, because, as I said, it was quite similar to a county setup for the amount of time, in terms of the amount of time you spent with one another. You were doing 3 or 4 days a week at Loughborough. But I think if maybe more of a franchise world or the modern day international world, where actually it's just meet up 3, 4, 5 days before your first game. I think it's just about making sure that you keep things simple. Your messaging is really clear, and there's some consistency and continuity in what you're talking about.
Yeah, and Nathan, with the women's team that you're working with now, obviously the pro team, this is the first year, so everyone's finding their feet, and I guess there isn't a template to work from, but is there the ability, and do you see it more maybe off season for the men and the women to train together, whether it be pre-season? I'm thinking kind of, or is there the ability now mid season to have these sort of sessions where the women can train with the men at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I think during the winter we mixed really well. I think there was some sessions where we had a few lanes of the indoor school, men and women on both sides of the hall, and I know our group certainly got a lot, even just from watching the men train. They sort of commented about how hard they were hitting the ball and how they were playing certain shots. So I think even just by being around, there's going to be some benefits. And I know certainly, once again, from my bowling coach perspective, a couple of times this year, we've had bowlers warming up out on the riverside together, and once again, just being around and watching is really beneficial, and you can learn so much. As for official training sessions, I don't know if we've got that far yet, but I'm sure that the men will be up for it. I know fielding coach Will did have a stump hitting competition that sort of has fallen by the wayside, but I'm sure we can pick that back up again, because I think that would be brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, any sort of competition, I seem to remember from my days, is always good. It doesn't matter whether it's always good.
And I think fielding something that the girls would feel comfortable competing with. So yeah, something that we should look at for sure.
Yeah, and I guess Laura, when you're going out into schools, you're not just working with the girls, are you? I presume you're working with boys and girls, and at that age, at young school, kind of primary school age, they're playing together anyway.
Yeah, definitely. So like, it's a normal class of, say, about 30. You could have an even split of boys and girls. So you just, on the day, you just don't know if you're going to get so many boys or so many girls. But I think it's a good challenge for the girls. Like when I was playing, I used to love playing with all the lads. I think it like in a way kind of toughens you up in a bit, like in a way. Because they obviously they whack the ball at you, and they just involve you like you are one of the lads as well.
Yeah, and I guess this has been the interesting thing with the webinars, chatting to the likes of Susie Bates and Katie Levick, who've come through school where you couldn't play cricket really. The opportunities weren't there as much, and they were driven by playing with older brothers or younger brothers. What's the split now when you're going in with the foundation into schools? Like, is the appetite there for girls to play cricket?
Yeah, it is quite hard, because obviously going into schools, cricket isn't main sport like what mainly schools play. It's always football. I do football here, and it's trying to tell them that once the football season is over, there is the cricket season just starting. So it is getting them like aware of like there's more than just other sports, and to getting them the real attention to turn to cricket.
But I guess it's driven, like most of us from experiences going through school, it's driven by your PE teachers, isn't it? It's driven by the opportunities, which I think is great with the Durham Cricket Foundation, is that you're getting out there and you're being their kind of door open into this world of cricket that maybe they wouldn't ordinarily be getting with structured PE.
Yeah, Yeah,
Yes.
literally just putting new sports and new things into the mind. So cricket, it's like there's loads of different aspects of other sports in cricket, like coordination, catching, and the girls and all the lads as well do pick up on that easy. So I think it once they know they can do it, it makes them want to play cricket more.
Yeah, brilliant. Nathan and Will, I'd like to get your oh, actually, we've got one coming through already, which I'll jump on and ask. Oh, that's a good one. So I'll adapt this one slightly. This person's asking what makes a coachable player. So first, what makes a coachable player? And then Will, if you could tell me kind of in your, if you were to design the perfect cricketer to coach, what would that look like? No names. I mean, you can give us a name if there is one already out there.
No, I think it comes back to some of the things I've just touched on. It's to make it. I think the best players with the water prepared to interact with you, to listen as well as talk. Again, you want to build up. You want to work with people that you know you can build up a trust with and a relationship with. So therefore, you can open up discussions around tactics, mindset, all that type of thing. And the better trust you have with that player, the more honest you can be with him or her. And I think then you're on the path to a really successful player-coach relationship. So when I get asked, what makes a coachable player, it's those simple characteristics, really. The ability to listen, the ability to take that little bit of constructive criticism from time to time and not take it personally. It's all in their best interest and things like that. And at the same time, the other thing I would throw into that as well is that ability to actually challenge the coach as well. We're not always right. It's important that they have their own voice as well and have their own opinions. So therefore, but again, so that's on us as coaches as much as it is the players to have that give and take relationship. So yeah, there's a few things there.
Yeah. What about you, Nathan? What do you?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with everything Will said. I guess the only thing I would add to that is just it's nice to work with players that just have that that desire to get better every time you see them. Every time they drive through the gates, they're just looking to get that that little bit better, not just sort of going through the motions. They're always the pleasure to work with those sorts of players.
And have you been able? They've got another one question actually that leads on from that. From James is saying, have you been able to learn anything from he's put from other female professional sports? So do you look around at other female professional sports at all, or is it kind of more your cricketing background that you're imparting on the team?
Yeah, personally not. It's probably something that down the line, probably once I've been involved in the game a little bit more, I will do. But I think probably initially I've been looking back to Australia and seeing where they are in terms of their professionalism, probably just slightly ahead of England at the moment, domestically that is, in terms of their structures. So yeah, probably just chat to some people back home and just learn about how to implement some standards and how they went about it back at those times. Because I think obviously this is a new competition and we're forging our way here, so any help we can get is beneficial. So yeah, back to my Aussie roots and trying to learn a little bit off back home.
And Laura, I mean, obviously you're at the start of both careers, coaching and playing, but are you seeing a lot more female coaches coming into the game, or is it still very much? Is it going to be a case of once the players start to retire, you'll start to see more of the women's game kind of populate into coaching?
Oh, there's definitely been recently loads more women coaches coming in, whether that be more grassroots level for all-stars, base of level of coaching, but still at the academy level. So we've got Layla Tipton now as well, head in the academy sort of setup as well, coaching, which is just great to see coming from where I was. There's something to look up to as well, coming from a coaching point of view. But yeah, the growth in women coaching is getting a lot bigger, which is great because I think the girls need a woman role model around to look up to as well.
Yeah, I think sometimes we talk often about role models being the professional players, don't we, and the elite sports person. But I think if you don't see coaches that look and sound like you, then it's very difficult to be that pioneer and that first person. But I get the impression that will start to change massively, as we've seen so much change in the women's professional game over the last few years. But the opportunities are very much there in your eyes, yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So guys, if I can ask you, like, if we bring it back down to sort of specifics around kind of sort of the differences, if we can say, between training and game day, are there subtle differences in the coaching aspects? Because obviously you can't do much once you're there. I mean, Will, I touched on your speech. I kind of think that you probably switch into sports psych mode more than coach. Do you? I mean, there are key coaching decisions to be made, but are there huge differences in the way you approach, obviously, a training day as opposed to a game day?
Yeah, there is, because you want to make sure that your body language and stuff on game day is a lot calmer than perhaps it is on practice days, where there's a little bit more urgency, a little bit more I don't know, sort of body language in terms of rushing around trying to make sure everybody's facilitated and catered for. So on a match day, it's so important that your body language is really nice and calm. And I would say that goes the same with your language as well. I think the most important thing for a coach on game day is to be absolutely clear with the messaging that you're about to give a player, because the last thing a player wants when they're going into a match is mixed messages. So I think body language is really important on game day, nice and calm, but also on top of that, you're messaging real clarity in what you're saying, so your player doesn't leave with any as I say, mixed messages of what they've got ahead of them.
And Nathan, what about you? What's your kind of tact?
I think you have different types of conversations on the days. I think, training days, you're having conversations about, making sure players are being really specific what they're working on and keeping them on task. And I think, as Will said, on match day, you're trying to keep them as relaxed as possible. You might have conversations about, the conditions, or last minute information about the opposition, or any tactical things that were picked up on when we've arrived at the ground, things like that. So just different types of conversations, but as Will said, your demeanor probably changes a fair bit as well.
I remember I was chatting to Danny early season as well, once the games got underway, and I was asking her how you balance training in between this mad season that you've got, of kind of gone from jumping straight from the one day into the T20, and they're thick and fast. So, you've obviously got to fit in recovery in there, but are you reacting? Are you reacting to each game and then kind of saying, right, we really need to get back in the nets with X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, for sure. And I'm learning as I go as well, because all this schedule's all new for all of us. And obviously, being this far north, we've spent a lot of time on the bus. We've played for quite a few southern counties. So, that recovery is really, really important. I think, your warm-ups almost become sometimes a mimic a training session. You make sure you're topping up on those skills, whereas you might not have had time to sort of practice them during the week when the games are coming. So you're trying to top up those skills in the warm-up as much as you can. And, things might not have gone well for a player on a certain skill last time, and you're just trying to really give them a bit of confidence heading to that next match. As you said, they come really fast, so it's sort of almost not reinventing the wheel, just reminding them that they're good and they can execute that skill. But sometimes you have to squeeze that in on a match day.
Dropping into that sports psych role that I mentioned about. So I've got a question here from Emma. Each of you, if you could change one or two things about the women's game, what would it be and why? Oh, that's a tough one. I should have read that before I read it out. Maybe just not throwing that curveball at you. Go on. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. There's a couple of things. The first one in the women's game that has been talked a lot about is the length of the wicket. I think that ship sailed a little bit. I think I get it, like the wicket length for in the pro women's game anyway. There's been a little bit of chat around making it shorter, so there's I don't really know. Rimo might shed some light on why they want that. I guess it's more reactive for the batters. It allows the bowlers to perhaps hit the pitch a little bit harder or bowl a short ball, which is something that I think is developing quite quickly in the women's game in terms of that short length, that exciting, aggressive type bowling. I don't know. It'd be interesting what Rimo says, but I kind of feel that ship has sailed with that particular one. The only other thing I would throw into the mix, and I haven't really got much sort of evidence behind it, but one of the things I get a little bit frustrated with watching the international cricket is such a vast difference in quality between your top tier teams, your Englands, Australias and Indias, compared to some of the lower tier teams. And I sometimes sympathise a lot with England when they get to major tournaments and there's this little bit of chat around their ability to deal with those high pressure games and high pressure moments. And I kind of sympathise because they very rarely play the type of opposition that provides that pressure, So I've thought a lot about it recently, especially watching this recent series between England and West Indies, where England was so dominant. I just wonder if there's a different way we could structure international cricket that enables the top tier teams to play against each other maybe a little bit more often to provide now, because I guarantee now West Indies or whoever it might be will thrash England in the near future. But I just love to competitive cricket at the highest level, and if there's a way we can do that.
Yeah, it's funny. It's a debate that we watch netball have. Like there's 4 teams that dominate netball internationally. And all the talk about whether netball would be in the Olympics. It is very difficult because the void is so big between Jamaica, England, Australia, New Zealand, and then the rest. So the debate probably would go on, because then you say, how do you make those lower level or lower ability teams kind of bridge that gap if they're not able to play? But you're right, it's the competition that we all thrive and watching, don't we? So what about you, Laura? Is there anything key that you would want to change in the women's game?
More just like the publicity side of it, but I think that does come with time in the development of the game. Like you've seen it with football and how like the women's Premier League and everything is grown over time, and now they're getting thousands and thousands and selling out stadiums and everything. I think just to see that, which I think it will end up going that way, but it does just take time to build that crowd and all that support for the game.
Yeah, and I think, I'll touch on the fact that the club have pulled this women's cricket network together, because I think it's so important that driving kind of, making people realise that the cricketers are real people, and being able to sort of hear their story, where they've come from, to be able to then become invested as a fan. I think you're right. It probably does take time, but yeah, I think it's certainly been great to see Durham embrace a women's team, and I'm sure you're proud to be part of that as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's great to see.
Yeah, cool. And Nathan, anything from you? What's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think just picking up on Will's point before, I don't think reduction in pitch length, probably that ship has sailed, and I think probably create more problems than it solves. I think for me, I sort of touched on it before. Maybe having the 5 outside the fielding circle, at least for a portion of the game, give something back to the bowlers. I'm obviously always in the bowlers camp, so and that would align it closer to the men's game. But I think the only other thing I would suggest is just making sure that the women's matches are played on decent quality wickets. Sometimes some matches are played on used pitches, sort of 3-4 day old wickets, and the standard drops a bit when you use those types of wickets. I think more so in the women's game than the men's game. So I think making sure you have really good high quality pitches and good facilities increases the standard for sure.
Great, brilliant, thank you. I've got one that's coming from Laura, which I probably will end with because I'm looking at the time and it's flown by as ever, 7:34 already. Question from Laura, brilliant question. And I think it's Laura. It's either Laura or Sarah. Any advice for a club thinking of starting a girls section. And I think I would also tag that on with any tips for any coaches here on the webinar that are moving into or currently are coaching women and girls. So yeah, two-pronged attack. Any advice for a club thinking about starting a women and girls section, and any advice for coaches that are currently working with women and girls? Start with you, Laura.
I think you just got to have, yet again, that key role model in the club. So you got to have that sort of anchor for the club for it to grow. And you just got to be patient with it. Like, it does take a lot of time for it to happen and for all the cogs to start working. But just that one person really in the club to get that drive for it to get all kick-started.
And what's your key advice to any coach that's working currently with women and girls?
It is a challenge and it is tough, but just to keep going and keep working with it and just to get that 1% better every day. Like, it's not going to happen straight away. It's not just going to be one straight line. So just getting that 1% better every day, pretty much.
I guess, and being aware that you are a role model every day when you go in here.
I would hope so. I'd like to think so.
Good stuff. What about you, Will? What's your kind of piece of advice for a club wanting to start a women and girls section, and for those coaches working with them?
I think for mine, it's going to be probably the most cliche answer of all, but it is the most important. You've got to have fun. You have to find ways of making sure the girls enjoy it. The first job you have as a coach of a new developing team or club or whatever it is to get them back. And the best chance of getting them back is by making sure that they have a good time. I would encourage not to overthink this is going to sound a bit bizarre, but bear with me. Don't overthink too much the basic cricket skills of they'll always come, but just keep making sure you have fun. Think outside the box a little bit. Try and develop the necessary skills, but in a game way. In create race games, make it competitive, and just keep challenging yourself to think outside the box. So yes, develop the basic skills, but find fun ways of doing it rather than just the sort of the classic drills and exercises. And the other thing, depending on what level you're coaching as well, the other thing I would really encourage as well, like, so if you're getting a bit older and you're starting to, have net sessions and competitive net sessions with bowlers v batters and stuff, is continue to challenge yourself to create different scenarios. The toughest thing we have in cricket in terms of getting better is you're generally, at least 50% of the time of the year, you've got nets either side of you. And it does make developing your game quite tough. So continue to try and find ways of creating scenarios in your net sessions and things. And as I said, I spoke a little bit earlier about the ability to deal with pressure at a high level. You can find ways of recreating that pressure in your practice, whether or not you as I say, you create scenarios, whether it's right goals, it's 20 off 10 to win and all that type of thing. That's pretty simplistic, but keep finding ways to make it challenging, fun, all the above, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, that competition element, absolutely, can't get away from that. Nathan, what about you? What's is there anything I know?
Yeah.
Is there anything you can
add? Amazing summary from Will. Really stole most of my thunder, and I agree with him completely. I mean, it's got to be fun, right? I think Will's point of you've got to get them back. And I think another way to do that is just try and build in some form of early success, whether it's even just if you're doing a batting drill, just put out a massive marker that they, can have some success with. And try and stay away from the nets. Agree with Will, try and have some sort of skill development. But if you do have to go into the nets, put some scoring zones out. Once again, make them massive so there's some elements of success there and they can walk away happy and more likely to come back.
Oh, it's brilliant. Listen, I can't believe yet again we've flown by, and I kind of feel like we've just sort of broken the surface slightly on everything that we could have talked about. I mean, you guys, thanks so much for your time and imparting a lot of the knowledge that you clearly have up there. And we are blessed in Durham to have all three of you as part of the setup and the team. So a huge thank you. Thank you to everyone on the webinar for your time. Just some last minute save the dates from me. I'm sure it's in the diary, but if not, please don't forget the next Women's Standalone T20 on July the 11th at the Banks Homes Riverside, which is going to be a celebration of women in our sport in our region. And as well as that, the final England ODI game in a 3-match series against India on the 22nd of July. It was such a fantastic night with the men against West Indies. So please, if you haven't got your ticket for that, make sure you do. Also, to mark your calendars for our next webinar on July the 28th, when we're going to be covering another exciting topic and introducing you to more of our amazing Durham team. So we do hope to see you all then. If you missed anything or want to revisit tonight's session, the webinar recording will be available on the Durham Cricket YouTube channel, and we'll also send you all a link in your emails. A huge thank you again to Nathan, to Will, and to Laura. Fantastic. Really do appreciate your time tonight, guys, and your insights. And of course, to you all for being part of the Women's Cricket Network. I really do hope you have a lovely sunny evening, and look forward to seeing you down at the Banks Homes Riverside very soon. Thanks, guys.